Welcome to T-Smack, home of the T-Smack. May I take your order?
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. I am your host, Josh Scar, and I am joined this week by someone very special. He is making a long-awaited return. It is Scotti. Scotti the Slothman. Welcome back.
I am back for like a sloth. I come around once in a while. I take my time. No, it's good to be back. I've been obviously recovering from surgery for a couple months and other stuff, so that wasn't really up to doing much in that time.
Well, yeah, you didn't have surgery for most of last year, though, so like we should have figured something out to get you back on, just scheduling wise and me changing jobs and everything. Being a grown up sucks.
I blame Lewis.
Yeah, let's say it's Lewis's fault. He's trying to start shit on Twitter.
We need a shirt that says it's Lewis's fault. It always is. Because he won't even listen to this. He won't even ever know. Hashtag it's Lewis's fault.
It's true. Neither does Matt. I don't know why I have him back all the time. Well, it's because he volunteers to come back. Lewis, I have to twist his arm to get him on the podcast. Why the hell did I even have him on for the preview episode? I guess because he likes video games. He knows what's coming up and all that. But I mean, Matt does that too.
He doesn't play video games. He's old.
He was just showing off his big setup on Twitter too. He's got his old SNES and Atari 2600 and whatnot.
He's like, look how cool I am. You gonna play any of that? Nope, I'm going to bed.
It's all for display.
Pretty much. He'll never know we're making fun of him. Ever.
I could make a quick headliner bit about this, but maybe not. We'll see. By the time this episode comes out, everyone on Twitter and our socials should know if we did or not. But we are here to talk about the new DC movie cinematic universe. I don't even know what you'd call it because they came out of the gate with a united movie and TV universe plan. So Marvel came out as the cinematic universe and it was strictly movies, which made sense. But now it's movies and TV. So it's it's not a cinematic universe. But they kept calling it the DC universe, but that's also the comics and also their app. So DC needs to figure out what the hell their universe is. Everything can't be the DC universe. That's also their online or not their MMORPG. Yeah. Everything can't be the fucking DC universe.
Sure it can.
I suppose they're doing it. So
it's all about the clicks, baby. DC universe. People, they're going to be looking for it online. They're going to click on something.
Fair. They're going to find something. That's right. So we're going to be back talking about the DC universe. Which one are we talking about? We'll find out. First, we're going to hear from Dan and Lou over at Casting Views. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan.
I'm Lou, and together we are Casting Views.
An uncle and nephew chatting on random topics, some heavy, some fun, but we aim to amuse.
Don't miss out, don't delay. Subscribe to Casting Views today.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Good Pods.
And we are back. Thanks to Dan and Lou for their promo. I love the last 2 or 3 weeks of episodes they've had. They've had some really fun ones with bombastic headlines, and this most recent episode they had was a really weird one about crazy photo stories where they talk about how newspapers out in England used to print stories that were strictly told through pictures, kind of like a comic book. And one of them is talking about how someone had an affair, and they have these girls posing in bed with Frank going what the hell, Sandy? And Sandy's sitting in bed with the sheets covering her bits, and she's just what are you talking about, Frank? The guy in the bed with me is just the plumber.
Telling away of a overly dramatic. It reminds me of Pablo Francisco, the comedian, his little bit about walking in and finding his way with someone else. And it's just, oh, Fernando, mi amigo, ¿por qué?
Porque, yes. He's also the guy that taught everyone how to do the heartbeat sound through their throat.
Yep, that guy. I love him. He's
Yes.
funny.
I forgot about him. That's a deep cut. That's back when Comedy Central used to show stand-up bits,
Yep.
stand-up sets.
Now they're like MTV. MTV used to show music. Now they don't. Comedy Central used to show stand-up. Now they don't.
Comedy Central is basically just the Daily Show in South Park.
That's all you need, though.
It's true. I mean, both of them bring in money, both of them bring in clicks, so that's all you really need.
It's like TLC used to be about learning.
The Learning Channel.
No, I have no idea what that's about.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what TLC has anymore.
Here's Honey Boo Boo. What the fuck am I watching? What am I learning?
What am I learning from
Don't
this?
eat McDonald's.
You shouldn't have to watch Honey Boo Boo to learn that one. I make that mistake about once every couple of weeks because
the McRib is gone now, so my vice is gone. It's over with.
This is supposed to be in the preamble before the ad. Why are we still doing this? Are we avoiding talking about the DC universe this badly?
Oh no. I just only know about half of the fucking things.
Which is classic James Gunn. That's one thing that I was going to bring up, so maybe I'll just bring it up now. Is this really feels like a weird mix of James Gunn compromising along with like the corporate model for success, because he's like, here's your Batman, here's your Superman, here's your Green Lantern. Now let me go play with my toys, which are the Creature Commandos, Amanda Waller, the Authority, and Swamp Thing, which Swamp Thing's kind of a middle ground. Like, I don't think he's more maybe cult status where people are aware of him, but not everyone is like, oh, I know all about Swamp Thing, like they would say about like Superman.
I agree. I mean, I think, he's had a movie before too. Was that back in the 80s or something like that?
Yeah, he had two, one with Heather Locklear in it.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit more, if you're looking at like the unknowns, he's D-list. Everything else is like Z-list. I have no idea who the hell these guys are.
Yeah, you're getting into like double letters. Like these guys are like double Z letters.
Yeah, like I've heard of the Authority, like in passing.
There's a really good recent Superman comic, Superman versus the Authority, which is
didn't they make that DC movie, like the animated?
I'm pretty sure they did, or something
I did watch
similar.
That. Okay, I wasn't for sure if they're the same thing because I never know a DC. I'm more of a Marvel person, if I'm being honest.
I mean, I mostly am too. I think the movies do play a big part in swaying me that way because #capitalism. But I mean, there's still a lot of really good stuff in DC, which we will get into. But we're going to go through this announcement by announcement. So James Gunn came out, head creative at DC now. He came out and gave this list of movies on January 31st. I shouldn't say movies, of properties that they're going to be turning into TV shows and movies. And so we're just going to go through each one as he brought them up. First, we got Creature Commandos, which, again, as we said, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, I thought this sounds like something from the 80s when they're just trying to make really long toy commercials.
Honestly, that could be the gag with it, though. Like, just make it like a super 80s theme, like a theme song and everything. Did it, Creature Commandos? Wow. I might watch it, honestly, because of that alone.
That does have a good hook to it. So the description that James Gunn gave out with this is all from the Hollywood Reporter as well. A 7-episode animated series written by James Gunn that is already in production, originally a team of classic monsters assembled to fight Nazis. This is a modern take on the concept. The voice actors have yet to be cast, but the executives are looking to find people who can voice the animated characters and also portray the live action versions when the anti-heroes show up in movies and series. So that's one thing that I think James Gunn has really had going forward with this universe that they were planning out, is he wants people who are okay with doing voice work for TV shows, because animation is kind of a big thing for DC, always has been, kind of always will be.
Yeah, they do a very good job at that. So
one of the things that Marvel has been running into is either scheduling conflicts or people who are just like, I'm not a voice actor. I don't want to do this, mainly with like their What If series. This is something where I think James Gunn is trying to get a leg up on Marvel, where like it's consistent throughout. But sometimes screen actors just can't do voice work. We've talked about this on other episodes. Like Dennis Quaid in Strange World, that wasn't necessarily like the greatest performance ever, but it was a performance, I guess.
So good to see that.
It's very much fine.
Yeah, that's a very good description.
Yeah, I've toyed with doing a bonus episode to review it, just to kind of give a little exposure to it, because it's a movie I think that's worth watching at least once, but it's not anything that you're going to be like, oh, this is my favorite movie ever.
So it's no Puss in Boots, The Last Wish,
No.
which was fantastic, by the way. Got to plug that every time because it's Oscar worthy. It's in the Shrek verse, which is superior to both the Marvel and DC universes.
Wow, high praise.
Okay. My boy Puss in Boots, taking one home for the Shrek verse.
So Creature Commandos, yeah, that they released a kind of a screenshot of the lineup that they have too, which if you remember from James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, there's a character in there called Weasel, played by his brother.
Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn, yes, thank you. Weasel's in the Creature Commandos as well, so I'm wondering if that's going to be like a loose tie-in to the Suicide Squad.
Now, has he mentioned anything about like continuity wise? I didn't actually get to watch the presentation. I was at work. I think I was at work. I don't know what I was doing. Who knows? But
smoking heroin, whatever.
You know me.
Do you smoke heroin? I don't know.
I believe you inject that, Josh, but I'm no expert.
Okay.
I mean, I only do I draw a line of cocaine, okay? I don't anything harder than that. I just can't do it.
I still love that bar story. Maybe we'll throw that in as a post-credits. We'll have you retell that story.
Oh, God.
So as far as the continuity goes, is from what I understand, everything in this announcement lineup is within the new DC universe. And then things like the Batman, Joker, and whatever other projects they might have working and going through right now, which may include Shazam, may include The Flash, may include Aquaman. What else? Blue Beetle. All those are kind of like on the fence from what I understand. If they do well, then they'll be like, oh yeah, these guys are in the DC universe. If they're not, they're going to put it under their Elseworlds banner.
Yeah, I knew that. I was just wondering maybe why. Like, did Suicide Squad continuity-wise take place in the same universe? I'm assuming it will because, I mean, James Gunn with John Cena, Peacemaker, doing season 2 of that. I don't know if the next property announced was Waller, but I know from what I've read, it takes place in between the seasons of the Peacemaker. So I'm assuming Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, all that took place in the... Who knows? I have no idea. They have a lot of explaining to actually do.
Well, let's get into Waller here real quick, because I have the description here. In a spinoff of Gunn's own HBO Max hit series Peacemaker, there you go, it takes place within the Peacemaker / the Suicide Squad universe. So that's all the kickoff for DC Universe, really, I guess. Viola Davis will return as the ruthless and morally ambiguous head of a government task force. It's written by Crystal Henry from Watchmen and Jeremy Carver, the creator of the Doom Patrol TV series.
Okay. I like Viola Davis as Waller. She's fine. I mean, so I'm glad she's just on board to keep doing it, I guess.
Yeah, she's a great carryover. I mean, she brings some gravitas to the role, and she also just like brings some legitimacy to this project that they're trying to do. So I'm not opposed to her returning. And it kind of makes sense within a multiverse. There are going to be people that will look similar to each other. So it's not a big deal one way or the other. I know Alex will take umbrage with the idea that the Suicide Squad is part of this universe because he doesn't like the Suicide Squad. I think it's fine. I thought the weird side track with Harley Quinn just going off on her own adventure was kind of unnecessary, but Harley's a big draw. So yeah, you're going to give her a moment to shine. And that's what they did with that.
I mean, I actually enjoyed Suicide Squad for what it was. It wasn't like, I went in with low expectations, but James Gunn, I was like, it'll probably be pretty good. I mean, I ended up liking it. I mean, who doesn't like a king shark that's just IQ of 5, but he's lovable and he eats people. It's fine. Everything's good.
For what the movie is, yeah, King Shark is okay. I prefer a better king shark that's sentient. Like the Harley Quinn TV series I can live without, but I think the king shark they have in there is really funny, and so is Bane. I don't know if you've watched that at all.
I have not. I've been wanting to.
I would recommend it just for Bane. He only shows up like maybe once every other episode, but for the most part, he's hilarious. Like he's a complete like step stool for everyone. Like they just walk all over him. He's like, I brought cupcakes. And he has the
Oh God,
yeah, he has the Dark Knight Dark Knight Rises voice. So yeah, it's great. So he's a joke, and it's just hilarious. Like in the most recent season, he's like holding a grudge against Harley and Ivy because Ivy was supposed to get married to someone, and then she realized she had feelings for Harley, so they broke off the wedding. And he's like, I want my toaster back. And he's just like hounding them, waiting for them to apologize for not returning his toaster.
I'll have to watch that. That sounds great. I love making fun of Bane anyway, so
it's not my most favorite thing ever, especially the first episode. The first episode is like, we're going to swear every other word to let you know that we're going to swear. You don't need to do that to really get that point across, but okay. But everything else in that show is a lot of fun. I'm not a huge fan of Haley Cuoco as Harley, but I get why you don't have Tara Strong or Arlene Sorkin come back with the accent. It's kind of like what they're doing with Mario. Listening to that accent for 30 minutes to however long, if you're binging it, is going to be a chore. So you want to tone down the accent a little bit just to kind of make it more bearable to listen to on extended viewings. Anyway, tangent over again. It's like we're supposed to be talking about one thing, and then it's just like, there's more things that we know about, and we'll talk about.
At least we're keeping it DC.
It's true. It's fair. So Superman Legacy, the movie featuring the Man of Steel that Gunn is writing and may direct, although no commitments on that have been made. That's all conjecture by The Hollywood Reporter. While the two previous titles are meant to be aperitifs, I don't know, in Seraphin's word, the other co-CEO of DC right now, Superman is the true kickoff for the duo's DC universe plans. It's not an origin story. It focuses on a Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned. And this one actually has a release date of July 11th, 2025. Which is all tentative. There may be casting or directing changes that cause all this stuff to just get completely pushed back. And it's DC, so who the hell knows? Like they, after just before Batman v Superman came out, they just were like, there's going to be a Nightwing movie. There's going to be a Batgirl movie. There's going to be a Swamp Thing movie. There's going to be a Justice League Dark movie. There's going to be a Zatanna movie. They're just listing everything, trying to build up hype. And
you get a movie.
Yeah, and they even like cast or they hired directors and screenwriters, and then just you never heard anything about it.
Yeah, honestly, for this one, the Superman, I'm not the biggest Superman fan. I mean, I did like Henry Cavill as Superman. Batman vs Superman was hot garbage, but sorry, Snyder fanboys, but Zack Snyder just, let's be mopey. Ugh. It's emo Superman. I like Henry Cavill was great. I thought he looked good. He fit the bill. Man of Steel was actually pretty decent for, a Superman movie. I actually enjoyed it. I sat there and was like, I hate Superman. I think he's a boring character. But Cavill actually invested me a little bit in it with Man of Steel. It's going to be interesting to see who they cast if they go a little bit younger. Because I know from everything I've seen, they want to cast a little bit younger. That way they can play in the next 10 plus years, whatever they need to do. I'm glad they're not doing the whole origin story again. I don't want to see Pa Kent get murdered by a tornado, which was just a great idea. Yep. Die by tornado. Okay. Save you, right? No, it's good. Just let me die.
We can't let these 12 people know you're Superman or you have powers. Yeah, no. This is like the number one thing that I'm so happy about with James Gunn taking over this is that one, there's a plan, and two, it just kills the Snyderverse. Like I know there's a few holdovers with the potential for Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, and we have confirmation that Viola Davis is coming back. So like all these Snyderverse carryovers are happening, but they're going to be handled in a way that is going to be more approachable to most people who don't just like grim, dark edgelord bullshit. And I like the idea of having a Superman who's going to be Superman just from the get-go. And the idea of him finding a balance between his human upbringing and his Kryptonian heritage, I think is kind of weird, because they have said that it's going to be inspired by All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, which is a great book, but it's largely like an end to Superman's story. So it's a weird balance of like good story, but it's a death of Superman kind of story as well. So if it's taking inspiration, yeah, I mean, you don't want to adapt something 100% directly, but it's also a little weird that you're like, yeah, let's adapt this story that's about Superman dying.
I don't know. I haven't read the comic at all, so I can't really say anything about it. But I mean, as long as they just give us not like the mopiness of what we need him, like from the Justice League Unlimited cartoons, like
Yes.
Justice League Unlimited. That's Superman I want to see. Just like he's positive. Yeah, like there's moments of doubt, but like that's where like he snaps right back to it because he remembers everything he stands for. That's kind of what I want to see.
I may cut this into the end of the episode after the music ends, but there's a really great monologue he has in like the last or second to last episode of Justice League Unlimited, where he talks about how he lives in a world of cardboard and he has to be careful every second of every day is to make sure he doesn't hurt someone or lose control. And it's such a great glimpse into like the mental strength of Superman, because you don't think of that sort of thing. Like with the Supergirl TV show, one thing that has bothered me with like any modern interpretation of Superman or Supergirl for that matter is modern technology is all like touch screen and everything. And Superman and Supergirl really shouldn't be able to just be typing angrily or like getting frustrated on their phones, because they would snap them. They would break them in just like the smallest fit of rage. And there's a scene very early on in the Supergirl show where she's on her iPhone texting angrily, and I'm like, her screen would be destroyed.
Yeah, it's just the little things. Makes it nice.
Yeah, and like
details.
You can't have someone be relatable doing that, and so I kind of get it, but it also adds to the character. It gives you an understanding of what they have to go through just to try and present themselves as human, as normal.
Because we tend to forget, just because they look like you and me, they're alien. So I mean, it still would be a foreign concept for them. Like, oh, I gotta be gentle and smashing my iPhone, finger through the iPhone. That'd be hilarious. Like one of those things would just like humanize them a little bit more. Like, oh crap, oops. I don't know. I like that idea. Even something small like that will be neat to see.
And it raises other questions, because like holding a fork, even like a titanium fork to them probably feels like a straw to us. So you have to be so careful to just touch it and hold it. So like there's potential with a new Superman and a new interpretation of it.
Superman cutting a steak, cuts right through the plate.
Like Mr. Incredible. I had that thought when I was trying to make a comparison. I was thinking about the fork. I'm like, I could just say like Mr. Incredible, but even Mr. Incredible is like putting a little effort into the cut, where Superman literally can just take it and whoosh. Well, I mean, I guess he has to deal with the physics of the fork and the knife as well. So there's little things here and there, but yeah. But James Gunn is writing it, so I think we have at least the idea of a good tone, because for the most part, his Guardians movies, they have a good heart to them, and they're fairly lighthearted. I do think that there could be potential for diving a bit too deep into the grimdark stuff, because he does have that, what is it, Bright? Is that What If Evil Superman story?
Did he
about like
direct it, or did he produce that?
I think he wrote and produced it.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But the idea is still like clearly buried in his head of like, what if Superman, but evil origin. So like that there's always concern, and there's never going to be a definitive, or I shouldn't say a definitive, but like a perfect interpretation, because there's so many things that go into making a 120 to 150 minute movie. So there's always going to be shortcuts taken. But let's keep going, because we're only 3 deep and we got more to go.
That's what she said.
Next on the list is Lanterns, which will be the replacement for Greg Berlanti's Green Lanterns TV series that he was working on. So Greg Berlanti is now officially done with DC properties after The Flash wraps up this year. And to go into the THR description of Lanterns, In the place of Berlanti's Green Lantern series, to quote, I want to say it's Peter Safran. I can't remember.
I think so.
Not James Gunn. Our vision for this is very much in the vein of True Detective. It's a terrestrial-based true detective drama. It will feature prominent Lantern heroes, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, and it's one of the most important shows they have in development. This plays a really big role in leading into the main story we are telling across film and TV.
Interesting.
So they did confirm, or James Gunn did confirm in the video, that this will take place on Earth, or at least in the Earth district within the Green Lantern Corps, which I think is kind of, it's playing too close to the vest, I think. Kind of like Thor, where they did Thor Earth-based in Thor 1 and Thor 2. And everyone's like, Thor is an extraterrestrial being. He can go anywhere. And then they did Thor Ragnarok, and hey, everyone loved it because it wasn't set on Earth for too long.
I think interesting when he says the whole true crime thing, instantly, I know Kyle Rayner's not part of it, but always go to the girlfriend in the fridge trope thing with him. So it's like, are they doing that without Kyle Rayner? Like, that's what I think of when I think True Detective. I think of something just like morbid and stupid. I don't know. I only watched a couple episodes of True Detective.
I heard the first season's really good, and then the 2 seasons after that are not quite as good.
All I remember is Matthew McConaughey chain smoking.
So yeah, I'm interested. I like the idea of introducing Jon Stewart. I would rather have someone different than Hal. You can allude to Hal, but I don't think you need Hal Jordan either. I think Kyle Rayner or Guy Gardner would have been a better choice, like maybe John's training guy to be a new Green Lantern, or you can have Jessica Cruz be the new Green Lantern. You get a little bit more representation in that way. I don't mind the idea of it being a True Detective story or True Detective-like story, and it apparently being like the big reveal of what this first chapter of the new DC universe is supposed to be about.
You think it could be Brainiac? Brainiac invades, gets the Justice League together. Or is that too
with the way it
Avengers-like?
I don't think that should affect their plan, especially when you could do it better. Like it's not like they nailed Ultron, so doing Brainiac, I think, would be another way for James Gunn to be like, look what I can do.
Knowing James Gunn, though, he's probably going to pick some off-the-wall enemies. It's not going to be Darkseid, not going to be Brainiac. It's going to be like, who I don't even know. Just something like, wow, really? That guy? Okay, cool. Who?
Yeah, I think with where this chapter ends with jumping the gun with Swamp Thing, I think it's going to be something that's a little more environmentally based. So maybe it's even just the Legion of Doom. Maybe they're going with something like that, where it's like an anti-Justice League sort of thing. And maybe chapter 2 is going to be kind of building up the rogues gallery and telling a different perspective of a superhero movie.
So I know why you want John to be training Guy. Just so he can have a line where he says, "Thanks, buddy." And he goes, "I'm not your buddy, Guy."
You found me out.
Ends. Cut to black.
Because the guys at South Park sued.
End of episode 1. No, it is interesting, though, that they're doing like, oh, this is kind of like, this is where you finally see what's going to be going on. Like, this is where we reveal what the big thing is going to be. That's a pretty interesting concept. Do you think they're going to take the whole post-credit scene?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't think that's a trope that really needs to happen. I think that's something that Marvel has really laid claim to, and it's really hard to pull off. But if anyone can do it, it's James Gunn, who's worked with Marvel for nearly 10 years at this point, or over 10 years, really, because production of the first Guardians of the Galaxy started in like 2012 with him being on board. So he's been with Marvel since just after the Disney merger.
Yeah, and considering before the whole, he got fired for this joke he made 10 years ago thing, wasn't he supposed to be like taking over like the MCU Cosmic after the fact? Like he was going to kind of, wasn't that like
sounds
his thing?
Right, but I couldn't say for sure. I think that was maybe a rumor that just never really substantiated.
Okay, I wasn't for sure. I know I've heard that multiple times. So
let's move to the bottom of the toy bin here, because this is another one where, like, yes, there's a a very prominent Superman storyline with these guys, but The Authority is not a household name. As described by THR, a movie based on a team of superheroes with rather extreme methods of protecting the planet that originated in the late 90s under an influential imprint known as Wildstorm. Run by artist and now head of DC Publishing Jim Lee, one of the things of the DCU is that it's not just a story of heroes and villains. Not every film and TV show is going to be about good guys versus bad guys. Giant things from the sky come and good guys win. There are white hats, black hats, and gray hats. They are kind of like Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men. They know that you want them on the wall, or at least they believe that. So this feels kind of like James Gunn again going into that bottom of the barrel Suicide Squad kind of thing, but maybe more of what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, where he kind of they were always pretty clean cut. Star-Lord had his issues with his dad in the comics, but he was pretty much like Space Captain America for the most part. But now he's this like rogue Han Solo type in the movies, which they've adapted into the comics now. Where this, I think they're just building a team of Han Solos, essentially.
It'll be interesting to see what they can do with this, just because, I mean, if anyone can make people like people you've never heard of, it's James Gunn. How much stuff of Groot did you see before Guardians 1?
I am Groot.
Yeah, not even people like, who the fuck is Groot? And now it's like, oh, Baby Groot, I love Baby Groot. Everyone knows Baby Groot. So, I mean, he has potential to take character of normal people will be like, who the fuck is this person? And be like, oh, that guy's awesome.
Well, that's one of the things that James Gunn clearly likes about these bottom of the toy bin kind of characters is that there is a little bit more creative license with them, because while some schmo from the early 90s may be like, Wildstorm was just the best guy ever and he's my favorite hero ever, James Gunn's going to put a twist on that and maybe make an improvement, or at least make him more accessible and give him some like character upgrades and put him into the mainstream. It's going to be something to see, because again, he did it with the Guardians, and he kind of did it with a few of the Suicide Squad guys too. Like Starro is known. Starro is a big deal in DC, but
yeah,
no one in their right mind was going to be like, Starro is going to be the villain of my movie. James Gunn, clearly not in his right mind, knocked that out of the park. Like, it was creepy, but funny and cool and kind of scary. He worked Starro into that story so well. And I don't know much about the Authority. Like I said, I know about the Superman versus the Authority comic that came out recently, which is on my to read list on DC Universe. Which version, you don't know.
Just roll the dice. We'll figure out which one it is.
You got a 1 in 4 chance of figuring out which version. But what James Gunn is able to do with these bottom of the bin characters, I have faith in. It's what he's doing with the top tier, the high shelf characters that I think I'm mostly intrigued by, because again, we don't know what he's going to do with them or how he's going to interpret them, which leads into the next property that they're going to be working on, which is called Paradise Lost. It's going to be a Game of Thrones style drama set on the all-female island of Themyscira, filled with political intrigue and scheming between power players. It takes place before the events of the Wonder Woman films, which again alludes to the idea that maybe Gal Gadot is coming back for a third movie, and that her Wonder Woman maybe is in this universe as well.
I never saw the second Wonder Woman because I heard it was awful.
I
had zero interest in watching it.
The Pedro Pascal bit alone, I think, is worth it, but there's not much else. Like, I've said this before, and anyone who's listened to previous episodes where this comes up, I think if it's kind of Patty Jenkins' homage to 1980s and 70s superhero movies, specifically Superman. Like, if that did come out in 1984, it would be regarded as like a masterpiece. Like, oh, it's kind of dated, but in 1984, we loved this movie. Whereas by today's standards, it's very campy and not good. The CGI, especially for cheetahs, they hide that in their gray scale very heavily, but it's very 80s. It has that trope of,
I might
like,
eventually just watch it just to watch it, but oh my god, watching anything DC has just been a pain lately. Like the Harley Quinn, was it Birds of Prey? Awful.
I thought that was fine. I I'm
I
fairly
want to be
easy to
Deadpool
please
so
now.
bad. Let's just do what Deadpool does, and hope to God this pans out. Awful movie. Now Morbius, that is a masterpiece. Okay, I can't even say that with a straight face. I'm sorry. I do think the Paradise Lost, it is an interesting concept if they can do it right. Obviously, people have that sour taste of Game of Thrones at that last season, but then House of Dragon came out and that took off really well. I mean, my wife absolutely watched it every single week. She was loving it. So I mean, if they did something similar and kind of set that in DC Universe, hey, this is what's going on. This is kind of pre Wonder Woman. I mean, even if you ended the season with a baby Wonder Woman, oh, okay, kind of cool.
Yeah, I think Paradise Lost, I think, has potential, but I don't necessarily like the idea of throwing turmoil into Paradise Island for the sake of creating drama. I mean, that's anything. Metropolis could be a literal metropolis if not for Lex Luthor. So I get it, but the idea is that Themyscira is supposed to be a paradise until they break that barrier with the outside world with Diana. And I think there is room to work, because the very first DC animated movie they made in 2007 with Wonder Woman, they have Ares imprisoned on Themyscira, and they have a rotating group of guards, and Ares eventually seduces one of those guards, and there's a coup and everything, and he breaks out and starts tormenting the world, and that's what triggers Diana to go out into the world. So there's room for stuff like that, where maybe there is someone who's power hungry from another established family that's been there just as long as Hippolyta. It's Game of Thrones, like they said in the description. So there can be pretty good political intrigue, but at the end of the day, it feels pretty hollow, because you know that Hippolyta has to stay in power if you want to get to Diana.
Because they don't want Hippolyta to be a hypocrite.
She's a politician. It's inherent.
Yeah, that's fair. If they do Ares, are they going to bring back the dude from Harry Potter, Professor Lupin? Harry in the first one.
Excuse me. Don't discredit David Thewlis like that.
He's a good
He is
actor.
The prince.
Okay.
He is the prince from Dragonheart. You pay respect.
You're fucking serious?
No,
how did you know?
No. Yeah, he is the prince from the Dragonheart.
That was a Harry Potter joke. It went over your head.
Nothing goes over my head. I am Harry Potter. God damn it.
You lived it. You lived those movies.
When I worked at McDonald's, the Harry Potter movies had just come out, and there's a woman with an accent who couldn't quite say Potter, so she'd be like, "Oh, it's Harry Potter."
Harry Potter.
I didn't even get that reference. Actually, I didn't start reading Harry Potter till 2005.
Yeah.
And
why would you?
I think
why would you want to read your own autobiography?
They're in the 6th book at that point.
You don't want to read your.
I lived it, man. Why do I need to? Why do I need to?
It was a little bit exaggerated, but they just added a few things. It was just about your first time trying shrooms. That's all that whole book was about. The big guy that gave you it was Hagrid. I don't know who Voldemort was. Probably the guy with no nose because he does meth. I don't know. The things you do. And
what is this drug-addled youth you're throwing into my backstory?
It's all about character development, and that's what we're just doing for you right now. Developing your character. Josh was born the boy who lived.
He overcame a shady youth to become a mildly unsuccessful podcaster.
You're a hairy wizard. It fits.
All
DC's
right.
Warner Brothers, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, see? Harry Potter could be in the DCU. We don't know yet.
And just to appease Matt as well, even though he doesn't listen, and because I agree, J.K. Rowling's a TERF. Fuck her. Fuck Harry Potter. And let's move on.
Are you soliciting me to you for sex? Is that what you're doing? You say fuck Harry Potter? I'm not, Josh, I don't. I appreciate the offer, but calm down.
We're both married men. What can we do? Could be married to each other.
Yeah, we get so much shit done.
Speaking of getting shit done, Batman, the Brave and the Bold As mentioned by James Gunn, this is the introduction to the DCU Batman, Bruce Wayne, and also introduce our favorite Robin, Damian Wayne, which, shocker, Damian Wayne's James Gunn's favorite, who is a little son of a bitch, which, I mean, literal and figurative. The movie will take inspiration from the now classic Batman run written by Grant Morrison and introduced Batman to a son he never knew existed, a murderous tween raised by assassins. It's a very strange father-son story, which I am all for this one, mostly because of what it implies, which is we have a Bat family from the get-go. So there should be an established Dick Grayson, an established Barbara Gordon, who is probably going to be Oracle by this point, Tim Drake. Maybe there will be a Red Hood story. Maybe Jason Todd's already just Red Hood. Who knows?
I really want to see Nightwing. I want to see Nightwing. I want to see Red Hood. Those, like, you could be like, yeah, these guys actually I'm not super familiar with like the comics with this, but Lucius Fox's son, was he already in the Bat family at this point when Damian first got introduced?
I believe so. Yeah, he joined up during like the Batman Incorporated. Well, I think if Batwing joined up during Batman Incorporated, that would have been a little bit after this Grant Morrison story introduced Damian.
I'd like to see him eventually too, but I'm not huge on Damian just because jumping a little bit. But that does make me excited that we don't have to sit through like and wait to see other Robins. Like we're going to have to wait for Dick Grayson, and it's this, and it's this. Isn't he supposed to be Batman? Supposed to be like in his like late 30s or something like that, early 40s?
Mid to late 30s at the most. Because that was one thing I was going to bring up. Because
Jensen Ackles?
He's a bit too short. No, I guess he was up for Captain America, which means he wouldn't be too short. I mean, I wouldn't hate that, but the idea of Batman and Robin existing in this universe for a while, I really enjoy that, and it does beg the question of when they are going to set the Batman age, because like we're supposed to be getting not necessarily a Superman origin, but a younger Superman, and if we're following specifically to the comics, he adopts, I should say, Dick Grayson at like age 9. He's Robin for probably 5 to 6 years, becomes Nightwing, moves out at around 18, and Tim Drake takes on Jason Todd, I'm sorry, becomes the second Robin for a year or two. Then he gets killed, quote unquote. Then Tim Drake. So like there's like 12 years of Batman stories that we're just jumping into if we're following like the comic timeline. And I think that could muddy the waters a little bit, but also like if you just say like, oh, Dick was Robin at the age of 13, I think that cleans things up a bit, but also it doesn't give him enough time to really become like the master crime fighter that he's supposed to be. So I think there's some weird balancing issues that come with jumping into a Bat family, but I mean, it also doesn't matter. They can just say whatever the hell they want. And I'll go with it as long as it's good.
Yeah. The things I really want to see out of a Batman movie, which the Robert Pattinson Batman movie did do a little bit better, was some of the detective stuff. I want to see him as the world's greatest detective. I don't want the same, it's got to be grounded in reality. Give me fucking Clayface. Give me something fantastical, because that's the stories I grew up with. I grew up, Batman the Animated Series was my introduction to Batman. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. But that was what I grew up with. That was why Batman was my favorite for a long time, because that's what I watched. And like all the stories of just, it wasn't like, oh, it's super realistic. I don't want that. Like I'm tired of saying Batman. The only thing realistic they can bring back is they can do the voice again.
I would. That's like it's like the one thing that I think that Zack Snyder had maybe kind of the right idea going into was the voice modulator. But I also just don't get why it's so hard to have someone change the inflection of their voice just a little bit, like Kevin Conroy did. It's not that difficult of an idea.
No, I don't think so either. And the only other thing that Snyder did actually pretty well was, as much as I hate The Dark Knight Returns, I think it's a shit comic and a shit storyline. Might be a hot take. I don't care. I don't like it. When he had the bat armor, at least he had like the all white eyes.
Yes.
That was awesome. Like that was like, okay.
They tried to work that into The Dark Knight as well when he had his sonar thing going on. but they ditched it pretty quickly because reasons. But I would like to see like a Spider-Man and a Deadpool kind of white mask eye kind of thing. I don't know how you justify it, but I also don't care. I don't want to see his eyes. I want to see a proper cowl.
The only reason I would want to see his eyes if we get another kiss from a rose.
But I agree with you. I would like to see a little more out there Batman stuff, which I think James Gunn is one to do because his history with these bottom of the barrel kind of characters. And the Damian Wayne story is also a little weird. Basically, what happens is Talia al Ghul finds out she's pregnant, and she has the League of Assassins take the embryo out and force grow Damian, because she's like, he's got Bruce Wayne's DNA, he's got my DNA, this kid's going to be unstoppable, let's get to work. And so she has them
She
grow
trapped
him
Batman.
over
Is what she did. She trapped him. She trapped him. That's
so she puts him in this tube, and she force grows him into a 14-year-old over the span of like 8 or 9 years. So he's a 13, 14-year-old kid with like 9 years age on him. And yeah, obviously he's going to have League of Assassins, League of Shadows, whatever you want to call him. He's going to have all that training, and he doesn't want to kill, especially once he finds out who his father is. So he wants to like meet Batman and meet his father. And I think there's a really interesting and good story to be told with that in a movie. It's just going to be trying not to tread on that Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul storyline that we got at the first and last Dark Knight movie, which again, I think James Gunn is one to lean more into the cartoony stuff, as we saw with Starro, with Guardians of the Galaxy. He made Ego the Living Planet the villain of the second Guardians movie. Like, come on.
Think there's any chance we get a Court of Owls? Because I like the Court of Owls storyline a lot. I know Damian was a big part of that.
I'm not one to project. I think that might be something that they're saving for the Batman sequel, which is the next thing we're talking about. That did get slated for October 2025. It's just going to be called The Batman Part 2. And this is obviously an Elseworld story because it's not going to be part of the DCU. But Matt Reeves is returning. I believe he's also still writing the script for that one.
You don't think they're going to bring back Barry Keoghan as Joker?
I hope not. I thought that Joker was so disgusting. If they do, it fits the universe, but for the most part, I'm not into it. I think the performance is fine, the voice is fine, but the makeup and everything, just, I know they really want to just emulate that Heath Ledger success, but just make him a dude with acid bleached skin.
Well, you don't like the disfigurement?
No, I don't like leprosy Joker.
Leprosy Joker.
Watch his fingers fall off.
Sounds like a commercial for like an old cereal. You might get lucky and find a finger in your box. Sounds awful.
Don't chew it. You can get a lawsuit and make millions. But before we move into the last few projects here, 2025 is going to be a huge year for comic book movies. We've got, I believe, the Kang Dynasty is coming out in 2025, that May. And then we've also got Superman, the Batman Part 2, and
Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four, that's right.
Isn't Deadpool as well? Or is that 2024?
I think that got bumped to 2024 because I think it was supposed to come out in 2023 and they bumped it a year.
No, because I thought Blade got moved back because they're not doing that. And I believe thought Deadpool was like right before or right after Fantastic Four.
Well, it's a good thing we have smartphones so we can look this up. Deadpool 3.
I don't know what you're talking about. I got a flip phone.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you still have your Motorola Razr. Release date, November 8th, 2024.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Because there's more
Marvel.
projects they haven't been announced for that year either, for Marvel at least. So, and it's what, Superman coming out that year and Batman?
Yep, the Batman Part 2.
When's Brave and the Bold come out? Was that 2026?
Brave and the Bold does not have a release date.
Okay,
These are all part of like Chapter 1, so probably somewhere between 2025 and 2028 is where most of these will probably release.
I couldn't remember which one, but yeah, it's gonna be Is Secret Wars that same year? Or is that 2026?
Secret Wars got bumped to 2026. It was supposed to be released in the same year, but then because of like the Blade fiasco that they've got going on there, they just decided to space it out over a year and bank in on that Endgame success that they had.
I have to save up now to buy all these tickets.
Seriously.
I just bought my Ant-Man tickets because that was almost sold out for the 7 o'clock show. How am I supposed to do this? Like every other week, I'll be at the movies. This is ridiculous. I love it.
I was talking with Ricky actually yesterday about how I actually have like the next 2 months of podcast episodes planned out, but most of them are movies and half of them she doesn't want to see. And I don't like going to the movies without her, or at least I feel guilty about it. And she's like, I don't want to see Cocaine Bear. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see that. I'm like,
I want to see Cocaine
okay.
Bear.
Well, maybe you and I have to have a mandate.
We should. I want to see that actually pretty bad because it looks hilarious. I want to see 65 as well.
65 is interesting. I might have to do like a bonus episode for that one, or we like tag an episode or something. I don't know. We haven't done a 2-part episode in a while, but that's enough inside baseball. We got 3 more movies or series, 2 movies and 1 series to get through. The next one announced was Booster Gold, which will be an HBO Max series. And
starring Chris Pratt.
Again,
it's gonna be Chris Pratt.
It could happen. James Gunn is not opposed to bringing some of his Guardians guys back. I think that would be a little bit of a mistake. I think you would want maybe not someone. Chris Pratt will be in his like early to mid 40s, which I guess like Robert Downey Jr. was in his mid 40s, but when he was cast as Iron Man. But I think you still want to go a little bit younger, like maybe early 30s for a Booster Gold, just because he needs to be established enough that the heroes of the future think he's dumb, but he also needs to be young enough that he's approachable in the present day.
That's very true. I joke with the Chris Pratt thing just because they talked about he's like, I could bring Chris Pratt back. Who knows? Honestly, if Chris Pratt comes back, then he's gonna be a voice of a character. It's gonna be like a short thing.
Yeah.
But I like Booster Gold. It'd be cool if they actually incorporate. If Blue Beetle does well, if they kind of incorporate him. Was it him and Ted Kord were really good buddies?
Yes.
I'd like that, even though Ted Kord obviously is gonna die. But spoiler.
Yeah, they've already confirmed Jaime Reyes is going to be the hero in Blue Beetle, which I mean, I think the suit looks amazing. Like it's all practical, which they'll touch up in post, but I think overall the suit at the very least looks great, which is what the internet is really focusing on with the buzz around the movie. No pun intended.
Of all the things like coming out, like just looking at, like, I don't really care about the next Shazam, to be honest with you. Zachary Levi has kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth anyways, but that's other reasons. But Aquaman, I mean, I I'm a big Aquaman fan. I'll be looking forward to that, but I don't know what it is about that. Just seeing that Blue Beetle, like just seeing the costume, I was like, damn, that looks good. I hope
it looks like they ripped it straight out of Young Justice or straight out of the comics.
I'm like, if they can nail this, like this could be a good movie.
So before we close the conversation on Booster Gold, James Gunn had a great description of it, which is imposter syndrome as a superhero, which I, as a podcaster that gets 30 to 60 listens per episode, I have never felt more seen.
Is he writing?
Thank you to everyone who listens.
Is he writing that one too?
I don't think so. I think he's only going to be writing like the kickoff with Superman, and then he's going to. One of the things that they're trying to do to differentiate again from Marvel is letting directors have a vision, and each movie, or at least each character, has their own style of film. So kind of following what Marvel was doing with like phase 1 and a little bit of phase 2, where Winter Soldier was like an espionage movie. The first Avenger was a World War II story / Indiana Jones adventure. And it kind of what they were talking about with Doctor Strange, where it's like a horror based movie, but it's not really horror based. It's just maybe a little thriller. But that's one thing that James Gunn is trying to really drive home with this universe, is that they're going to let creators create, and we'll see what happens, because if they find a formula that works, it's hard to not have executives and higher ups start butting in and being like, follow that formula, do that again.
Okay. I mean, it just seems like Booster Gold would be totally a James Gunn thing he'd want to write. It just screams James Gunn to me. I'm sorry. But
I can see it. Maybe he hands it off to Sean Gunn. I don't know if Sean Gunn has too much writing credit or if he's even actually interested in comic books. I just know he was Kirk in Gilmore Girls, and he's James Gunn's little brother, and James Gunn loves putting him in his projects.
I think Michael Rooker will show up as someone else again.
God, I hope not.
Well, Nathan Fillion. I wouldn't mind seeing him again, even though he was
Arms fall off boy.
Yeah.
Which I still love that. Like I just love that the arms were like just bouncing around, just like floating like the brooms in Fantasia or something like that. I thought that was great. All right, so penultimate entry into DC Universe's Chapter 1, which they have dubbed Gods and Monsters, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And it's described as taking its cues from the recent Tom King written miniseries. The movie promises a different take on what most think when Superman's cousin comes to mind. We will see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, and who watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life, and then come to Earth. She is much more hardcore and not the Supergirl we're used to.
Now, the first thing
I'm okay with like 2/3 of what that description is. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll say the first thing you said was like it's a different take on it. So immediately my mind went to Clark Kent landed in Alabama and his cousin lands there too, and it's a love story. No, that's not the take you're going with.
I'm not the one making it. That sounds like something you would make.
It's a love story between cousins in Alabama. Clark Kent is super incest. But anyways, no, I know you were excited to talk about Supergirl anyways. I'm not super well versed with Supergirl. I didn't watch any of the CW show at all. She isn't like my go-to when I think DC, but I know you were a little bit more versed with her.
Yeah, the TV show I think did a really good job of representing a lot of what Kara is. I know they call her Kara. I think they were trying to differentiate her from Carol Danvers because she was Kara Danvers or Kara Danvers. But I like most of what this says, which I like the idea of differentiating the two because there is a really good talking point. I think it's in Justice League Unlimited, but I can't remember. It could be from the Supergirl show as well, where she talks about how she was sent along with Kal-El, Clark, to watch over him and help raise him and teach him about Krypton as he grew up. But she got knocked into the Phantom Zone or whatever continuity you want to talk about, where she just ends up in deep space and hypersleep. And she ended up on Earth eventually, and 30 years later, and Cal's all grown up and he's Superman. And now Cal has to teach Kara about Earth and how to integrate into a society where she is essentially a god. And I think there's a really good take to be had there, especially with like the differences between what they're doing with Superman, where he's trying to find a balance between accepting who he is as a Kryptonian, but also figuring out how he blends in with Earth. Whereas Kara is mostly just trying to integrate and move on with life after experiencing nothing but tragedy in her life. But the way they end that opening description about how raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, who watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life, it sounds like we're getting like a really war-torn Krypton, which I don't like that. Like Krypton's supposed to be a utopia that's like, why would our planet blow up? We're so great at everything we do. There's no reason for our planet to blow up. And that's why they don't believe Jor-El, is because nothing but Jor-El is saying that their planet's about to blow up. So like this idea that Kara's spent the first 14 years of her life just in a war-torn country or something, like I don't get that.
Yeah, that's definitely a different take, but I mean it could be interesting. I don't know. So is this the way it's sounding? It looks like Superman might be a part of this a little bit, at least, possibly.
I would assume they would try to work Superman into the story a little bit to maybe to like cap the beginning and the end of the movie. But yeah, I don't know for sure. But the main thing that, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what's happening here. Like maybe they're just talking about the end of Krypton and she just saw everyone she knows blow up in a fiery explosion of the entire planet. Like maybe it's just a bad way they explained it. But the idea of her being hardcore and like on the verge of killing people without remorse just because she's an immigrant, or not, I'm sorry, a refugee, not an immigrant. She's a refugee in this scenario. She's like vengeful and hateful, and she takes it out on the people around her on Earth. I don't I can see where you would want to lean into that, but it depends on how far into that quote unquote hardcore they're going for me. That I'm like, you might lose me on this one, because it sounds like they're trying to placate some of the Snyder boys. Like, you want that mean stoic Superman? It's not going to be Clark, but we'll give you Kara.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like a little bit of a cop out too. Like, yeah, let's make her just hormonal and angry. That's women. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, I know that's one thing that Alex actually has against James Gunn, is that he doesn't necessarily write women very well. I don't know that I've seen enough of his work to really agree or disagree with that. I do think Gamora is kind of one note, but that could be just what he's doing, like what he ended up doing with Drax. But I think Nebula is a little bit more well-rounded.
Yeah, I guess I never really noticed, but I like you. I've only seen a few of James Gunn movies. I mean, like obviously the Scooby Doo's, Slither years ago, but I had to agree with you on. I don't really like the concept of her just being like crazy and killing people because reasons. You know, like, oh, she's struggling to adapt. I just don't really see the point of going there. That's never how I've ever actually. Maybe that's because, as I'm saying this, I've never seen a Supergirl really like that. Maybe that's the whole point. Like, we've never seen a Supergirl like that. Let's do that. But at the same time, like, are you trying to? What is this? Who is this universe for? Is it for the Snyder fanboys? Like, we want a more adult kind of setting, or is it, as a lot of other people said, the MCU is more for kids? Who's your target audience for this? Like, do you want her to be like a role model, like Wonder Woman kind of thing for little girls? Like, hey, look, Supergirl. Or are you just kind of taking that out route of, let's just make her mean? Like, I just don't really understand what his target here. I guess it's going to be something we have to wait and see anyways until it actually starts and after the first movie in this new universe, where we get an actual tone of who they're targeting, essentially.
I think that's actually a great question too, because there are properties in here, especially with the last one with Swamp Thing, where they're going to lean into a hard rated R, just because that is James Gunn's forte with movies like Slither and Bright, and it's something that a lot of DC fans, at least in the animated side of things, really enjoy. I don't necessarily enjoy a lot of those things in the DC animated movies. I also don't enjoy the over sexualization of women in those movies. Like, if you're a woman in those movies, like, your boobs are out. I mean, it's like an unwritten rule in those movies where if any female character, your boobs are coming out at some point in the movie. Like, Batgirl's in the Killing Joke for what, 15-20 minutes, and she's taking her bra off, banging Batman.
Yeah, that was that was an interesting choice, I guess.
It was a choice, to say
It
the
was a
least.
choice, yes.
But I think that is a really interesting question, is who are they making these movies for? And if they are following the Marvel formula, where each property is vital to telling the overarching story, which they have dubbed this first chapter, which the chapter may be what they're calling the phase, and then by the end of the phase or chapters, it's a book. Who are these chapters and who are these properties for? Because if you're not making a universal PG-13 slate of movies and properties, not everyone's going to see these. So is everyone really going to be able to get the full story? So I think that's actually a really interesting question that we're going to have to wait 2.5 more years to find out the answer to.
Yeah, because leading up into, obviously, the next thing being Swamp Thing, the last thing, I mean, as you said, that one is going to be borderline more that rated R because of the more horror elements to it. Swamp Thing is just kind of ruthless anyway. So, I mean, going back to like talking about how the creature commandos and everything, I think that's where we see them show up. like as like a live action kind of thing. I think that's where they
Mhm.
tie that into. But it's just you hear Swamp Thing being the last thing. It's like, okay, maybe they are going more for like the adult oriented one. Like I don't know. It's such a weird, strange lineup of characters. It's not what you typically think of like when you're picking like if you were to before all these announcements, like obviously Superman, Batman, those things are more than likely going to get announced. Green Lantern, yeah, but like Swamp Thing was not on my list of like must-have characters. Like especially for an established universe, like he's just so. I get the James Gunn effect. I get it, but why? Another thing, the Constantine movie, the sequel, was that even mentioned at all? 'Cause I know with
No, that wasn't mentioned. I know that did get greenlit, but I think that no, Constantine is DC.
it is.
I was gonna say I think that's Vertigo, but no, it is a full DC property. But yeah, I think this is mostly just about announcing projects that weren't even in development before James Gunn and Peter Serafin or whatever his name is took over. That wasn't mentioned in here, but that's probably going to fall under their Elseworlds brand with like Joker and Harley Quinn, whatever that is going to be called. I know it's got a title. It's
Folia do.
something French. Yeah, Tango for Two or something like that.
I never watched Joker in the first place.
Neither did I. I didn't want to watch it. It looked stupid. So speaking of DC Universe, again, which one? The mobile app. When that launched, that was actually meant to be like a dual service sort of thing. It was supposed to have streaming service as well as a comic subscription service to it, where you got a whole selection of backlog of comics. Which the way they launched that was like classic DC, where it's like you get a selection of comics. So like you can get Nightwing number 12 to 16, but you don't get 1 to 11. And then we're also going to give you 23 to 36. Like it was just completely random and like incomplete storylines and everything. But the main thing they were launching was their streaming service, which was kind of supposed to be a soft launch for HBO Max. And they had put Young Justice, Titans, and Swamp Thing as like their 3 big properties that they were going to launch with it. And Swamp Thing was my second most anticipated thing on there because Young Justice was my most anticipated.
Oh, of course.
But Swamp Thing just looked interesting and it looked really good for a TV budget. It only went, I think, 8 episodes because they ran out of a budget.
Was it 6? I thought it was only like 6 or 8 episodes. Yeah,
I thought it was supposed to be like, I think it was supposed to be like 10 or 12 episodes.
Yeah.
And they had to cut it after, maybe it was 6. I thought it was 6 or 8. But yeah, they had to cut it short and be like, film the finale because we can't do this anymore. You guys are out of money.
I heard decent things about it.
It was surprisingly good. I think the plot moved a little slow, but what they were building towards was going to be really interesting for that first season. And then they ended up having to leave it as a cliffhanger and hope that they could maybe get a budget for a season 2. And unfortunately, that never happened.
Unfortunate.
But I believe that's on HBO Max, and I would recommend checking it out.
I might have to. Now, thinking of Swamp Thing, it leads me to believe that maybe we will be getting a Justice League Dark kind of thing down the line, which I would be cool. Zatanna is one of my favorite DC characters, or Constantine. Matt Ryan, they just need to bring him back. He is so perfect. That show deserved a second chance, too. I don't know if you ever watched the CW, or before it was CW.
I fell off the CW shows around the time they came out with Legends of Tomorrow. There just started to be too many, and like it was every day of the week, and it's like I got a job and a life, man.
The Constantine show was really interesting. I was really excited for what they were building up, and he just embodied John Constantine so well. And I thought that was an out of the park casting that pretty much got wasted. But I would like to see a big screen kind of Justice League Dark. I mean, even if we want to bring Dr. Fate back, which I don't know if you saw Black Adam or not.
I did. I thought it was very, very fun. It was not great, but it was fun.
I mean, the plot was stupid. The acting was great. I mean, like Pierce Brosnan was fantastic as.
Well, if you want to, you can go back and listen to our Shazam episode. But I felt like there were 2 movies happening. There was like an X-Men movie happening with Dr. Fate and Hawkman and their team with the Justice Society. And then there was the Black Adam movie. And when the 2 merged, it wasn't quite right. But when they were separate, they were great.
I agree with that. I thought, was it Aldous Hodge as Hawkman? He actually, I think his name is Aldous Hodge, if that's correct, maybe? I thought he was fantastic. Like is it Noah Centino? It's Noah. I know his name's Noah. As Adam Smasher, he was fun. The girl played
He was
Cyclone.
basically Spider-Man.
Pretty much.
Aldous Hodge, yeah. Aldous Hodge, Noah Centineo.
Wasn't he supposed to play? He was supposed to play He-Man in the
Was he?
live action He-Man show for Netflix. That I think got
Oh,
dumped.
I mean, thank God he didn't. I could not see him pulling off that blonde bowl cut. And then Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone, which Cyclone, like, oh man, I want a movie for her just because of that the way they represented her powers. Like, they were fantastic.
Yeah, I would have rather, after watching the movie, I would much rather have been a Justice Society movie, and The Rock could have just gotten the fuck out of there. I don't even give a shit. It was like the story was the Rock story was like whatever. I barely speak throughout the whole movie. I'm just gonna be brooding. Ooh, and the Justice Society portion was actually interesting. I don't know, like it was a terrible movie, but like it just wasn't great.
Yeah, that's one thing that the Fast and the Furious movies have kind of soured me on with The Rock. Like, he's super charismatic, and like you love the guy the minute he opens his mouth. But this weird bleed through from the Fast and the Furious movies where like they work it into their contracts where, okay, you threw 8 punches, well, I get to throw 9, and I can never lose, but we can tie. That's fine. If you know these things, there's no real tension in any fight because it's like, okay, they're either going to draw or he's going to overpower them eventually. And like, how do they resolve the fight is now a bigger question than who wins. If it's a tie, how do you tie? Or, oh, he's going to win because they're going to have to withdraw so they can recalibrate and get new guns or something.
Yeah, going back to the original point of this being, if they ever set up Justice League Dark and like I would like to see Dr. Fate come back. I don't know if Pierce Brosnan would be willing to come back at that point, but he was fantastic as Dr. Fate. Like that was a good casting right there. Like
I think you could recast Dr. Fate because the Dr. Fate is the helmet. So you could bring in Zatanna's dad, as the new Dr. Fate, which gives you a backdoor into introducing Zatanna.
that would work. Does he have the really shitty mustache? Like in Young Justice?
I mean, you have to have the Tweedly mustache. I think one thing that they really need to bank on is if they're going to have Dr. Fate, he needs to keep the helmet on. That was probably my biggest complaints about Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, is that he just kept popping it on and off, and he still had the powers.
Because wasn't
And
Young
like
Justice?
that's not how that works.
Yeah, Young Justice, right? Where you put it on, it's like, oh yeah, you're stuck with it. You can't take this off.
Yeah. Naboo inherited the body, or inhabited the body, and he could be like, no, I'm not giving it back, and he had to be swayed to let it go, either through like, this is a young person who has to live their life, or like they're not really someone who believes in the mystic arts, so their powers are never going to be to what you need them to be, so let them go. Like in Young Justice, when he inhabited Wally, that's how they were able to let him go. Like, he's a kid of science, he doesn't believe in magic, so your powers are never going to be fully at their peak levels, and so they let him go. And eventually he took over Zatanna's dad's body because he wasn't going to let Zatanna go.
I think it'd be interesting. I mean, overall, it's a pretty unique lineup of movies and shows and everything. I think we kind of hit it home with the who's the target audience kind of thing is the biggest what if, kind of like what's going on. That's the biggest unanswered question over anything. So I think there's some good ideas there. I mean, even before the announcement, I was trying to think of like, just because James Gunn was going to throw these random names out anyways. I was thinking of like random people, like, oh, I could see him like trying to make a movie out of that. Plastic Man was a big speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Animal Man was another one I heard a lot about.
Metamorpho is one that I was surprised he didn't go for.
Yeah, that's a pretty random ass dude. I know he's been talking about, like, well, even before all this, he did like a bunch of polls on Twitter, like, oh, who would you guys want to see? Like, Mr. Terrific was one of them. And I mean, you could just obviously take a bunch of random names from DC, throw it on the dartboard, and throw a dart at it, and James Gunn would probably make a good movie out of it. But it's just like what's that?
I was gonna say, yeah, if they're not tied to the Bat family or Superman, you could pretty much just pull anyone out of the lineup, because I mean, that's all people really know about the DC universe is who are the big 7 from the Justice League, the Bat Family, Superman, and then Wonder Woman. Yeah, anyone who's not the 7 big ones from Justice League, which again, even Aquaman, you could probably still say is C-D list, even with Jason Momoa.
Yeah. He did confirm, though, we're not going to be seeing Condiment King. Will be no,
which I'm fine with.
Which I know. I'm making fun of the fact of that. Who gives a shit about Condiment King? There's probably obviously the one person that's gonna listen to it and be like, I fucking love that guy.
Is it the Trickster? Is the one that Mark Hamill played? I don't think it's the Trickster. It's something like that though. I could see him trying to bring Mark Hamill back for like a cameo to be like this out of shape supervillain that's going to get a one-off moment. Now I got to look it up. Yeah, the Trickster. Okay, I was right. It just seemed too basic.
That's DC for you.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping this up. I think we hit the nail. We peaked when we started talking about who is the target audience. We came to that conclusion a little late.
We did.
But we got there.
We did. That's all that matters.
That is the important thing. It's the journey, not the destination.
Life's a garden, dig it. That has nothing to do with anything. It just came into my head. Thank you, Joe Dirt. We'd have an episode of old movie reviews for comedies. We do Joe Dirt.
There we go. I mean, one of the last episodes you were on was that Godzilla King of the Monsters. That was a 4 or 5-year-old movie at that point.
Yeah, I guess.
So you can follow me on Twitter at Josh_Scar at Talking, and you can follow the podcast at Talking Smack Pod. Please join our Discord. Scotti, I'm talking to you.
I need an invite there, sir. I've had Discord forever.
I've sent you invites.
Is it in the group chat on Facebook?
No, I think I texted it to you.
I don't think you did. I think you're a liar.
I think I did. I'll have to find it, but yeah, Scotti, join the Discord because you'd have fun there. I don't know why you haven't already joined it. We also have a link to the invite in our episode description through our link tree. You can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com if you have any thoughts, questions, want to be a guest on the podcast, or we put out a call to action. We're going to watch, I think next week's episode is What You Doing? And then the week after that is Ant-Man and the Wasp, or not Ant-Man. Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So if you see that before we record, send us your reviews and we'll read them on the air. Let you know what we think about your thoughts of the movie. Thank you to Leo Allen and for our musical themes. Thank you to Beppo for our original avatars, as well as Retro Ale Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please subscribe, rate, review. Thank you to everyone who reviews us every week on Good Pods. That's always fun to see all those listens, as well as everyone who has liked and reviewed us on your platform of choice, like Apple. Scotti, do you want to plug your socials, or are you going to leave those private?
Yeah,
I already tagged you in a post this week, so it's not like your socials aren't out there.
it's pretty much just the same. It's Twitter. Scotti don't know. I think it's an extra W. I don't even know at this point. So yeah, I'm just holding true to my name. That's pretty much the only thing I really use anymore. And I'm barely on that. But yeah, you can follow me on there if you'd like. Argue with me. Tell me I'm stupid. It's fine. My DM,
Scotti, coming soon to the Talking Smack Discord.
and that too. I'll be there eventually. My DMs are always open, you know.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Have a great week, and we will see you next week with What You Doing? Take care.
Who loves T-Smack?
I love T-Smack. Is it true? Mm-hmm. I do, ooh.